it's funny because they'll say Yehovah, which is what I found the vowels to be, and we can get to that if we have time. Yehovah is, scholars will say, well, it's an impossible hybrid form. Okay, why is it impossible? Well, it's only impossible if you say it's a verb, a single form of a single verb, which it's not. Nobody says that. Whereas Yahweh is a single form of a verb, but it's a made up form. It's an impossible form. I guess it's not impossible. It's just made up, right? There's no, in other words, if you look throughout the entire history of the Hebrew language, you don't find the form Yahweh. You just don't find it, right? So how do we know it is that? Well, we just made it up, right? So could it be? Sure, anything's possible. It could be Yuhu Vuhu, right? If we don't know what the vowels are, the vowels could be anything. Right, they could be anything within the Hebrew vowel patterns, right? Hebrew consonant and vowel patterns. What I say in my prayer was, I want to see this in one of the manuscripts. Where is a manuscript of the look? How do we have the Bible at all? There were scribes, Jewish scribes, who faithfully copied and transcribed the Bible over many generations. Where did they ever record it to be Yahweh or Yahweh? They didn't. So that was my prayer. I want to see how it's recorded. So here's the problem. It's recorded in the Hebrew manuscripts, in the earliest Hebrew manuscripts with vowels, with one of the vowels missing. And what I found is that sometimes that missing vowel isn't missing, it's included. In the most important manuscript of the Bible in Hebrew, the Aleppo Codex, it's between 6 and 8 times. 2 of them, I think, are later additions. But it's 6 times originally. Some manuscripts I later found, like, for example, the Damascus Crown, which was from the 10th century, it's one of the key manuscripts of the Bible in Hebrew, in most places has that missing vowel not missing. It's included in almost every place. So, which, seems kind of important. Now, that makes the name Yehovah, which actually, when you think about it, makes a lot of sense, because we have Hebrew names that are called theophoric names, and those are names which have God's name in them. Like my name, Nehemia, is Yehovah comforts. Well, why isn't it Nechem Yeho, right? Why is it Nechem? Or if you think about Netanyahu, so Nehemiah is actually short for Nehemyahu, just like Netanyahu. So at the end of a name, it's always Yahu, but at the beginning of a name, it's always Yeho. And there are linguistic reasons for that I could go into if you want, but they're a bit complicated. It has to do with the shortening of vowels when they're distant from the place of the emphasized syllable. So Yahu becomes Yeho when it's at the beginning of a name, right? So the name Netanyahu is actually the same name as Yehonatan or Jonathan. What do I mean? It's the same name. It means the same thing. Netanyahu means Yehovah gives, and Yehonatan means Yehovah gives. It's just the word give and the word Yehovah are one's at the beginning and one's at the end, and then they switch. And then you get Yehonatan becomes Netanyahu. So it's always Yeho at the beginning of a name, and that's because it's distant from the place of the emphasized syllable. So the vowel is shortened. So in God's name, it would not be Yahuwah. That's not how it would be. It would be Yehovah, right? It would, that form would, that first syllable would shorten, basically. So, or you could say it would elongate in the emphasized position. It's 6-1, 1/2 dozen of the other. So long story, TLDR is from the Hebrew manuscripts, as far as I can tell, it's Yehovah. And I later found numerous rabbis say it's Yehovah. One of the things I was taught as a fact, which was common knowledge, is the Jews didn't remember how to pronounce the name, and no Jewish source ever gives a pronunciation of the name. Well, I knew that wasn't true. But what I didn't know is there's numerous rabbis who say it's Yehovah. And then they refer to it as a secret, which is very interesting. Why is it a secret? Because the rabbi said it's forbidden to pronounce, and it can only be transmitted by rabbi to disciple once every 7 years. Right? So it was literally this secret that was transmitted from rabbi to disciple, according to what they're saying. I don't know if it was literally every 7 years, but at some point the rabbi would apparently reveal it to his disciple. So, and we have these interesting ceremonies. How they do. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
It's amazing, the journey of uncovering the name of God. And so I imagine going against common culture, you got a little bit of pushback as you are, you wrote books on this. I know you worked with Keith Johnson on this project, and it took years of study, from what I understand.
Let's replace the word a little bit with a lot of
Oh,
pushback.
yeah, okay. So
It's quite funny. I get two types of pushback. One, well, I get more than two. This morning, I got an email from someone who said, "I can't believe you're so stupid. Don't you know there's no V in ancient Hebrew?" So yeah, I've got that little PhD thing, but what do I know, right? I know there's people who say there's no V in ancient Hebrew. I don't know that there was no V in ancient Hebrew, right? There's a difference. So one of the types of pushback I get is, well, no, those are the vowels of Adonai, which is the Hebrew for Lord. So that's the common pushback I'll get from scholars. And then from the non-scholars, the pushback I'll get is, Nehemia, you're deceiving people. You're saying you discovered something, but everybody knows that's the pronunciation of the name. Okay, great. I didn't discover anything new. I'm just stating the obvious. Wonderful, right? I don't think I'm deceiving people, but because all the scholars tell me that it's an impossible hybrid, and those are the vowels of Adonai, even though Adonai has an A in it, not an eh, but okay. So it's funny. I get the two opposite criticisms. One is what you're saying couldn't possibly be correct, and the other, usually from Jews who aren't academics, will say, this isn't a discovery, this is obvious. Why are you pretending you discovered something? So
yeah, so this show is about living in the freedom of God. So when these things come against you, it can, I would imagine, maybe it's just me being a female, but it could hurt and be like, I am dedicating years into this and money into this, and I'm doing my best work to share this powerful truth, because there's power in the name of God. There's power in the name of God.
So,
and
yeah. So
what strategies do you use to kind of overcome that and to stand strong in that place?
So the one word answer is autism. So you say it's because you're a female, and I have what's called Asperger's, which is, it's been described as an extreme expression of the male mind, right? So, and this isn't me saying it, like psychologists say that, women are very intuitive, and what they really mean by that is there are, usually male psychologists will say this, there are things that women just pick up on that men don't pick up on, just intuitively, naturally. I don't know why. It's how God created us. And autism is an extreme expression of the male mind that, if my beautiful wife is upset with me, she knows she needs to tell me that, because I would never know in a million years unless she tells me. She's like, well, not she, but let's say in previous situations, I had women say, don't you know, can't you tell I'm upset? No, I have no idea. You have some sixth sense I just don't have. That's not how God created me. Now I can use my intellect to try to infer, and I'll be right maybe 60% of the time. But the other 40%, maybe she just has a stomach ache and I think she's upset with me, right? So I just don't even try anymore, right? She'll tell me if she, that's the beautiful relationship we have. She'll tell me if she's upset with me. So one of the characteristics of Asperger's, and I openly admit this, is that, and they say this, that Einstein had this, not that I'm Einstein, but it's a characteristic of Asperger's, is you kind of don't care what anybody thinks. And you do to some extent, right? But not the way most people do. So if you know that you're right about something, you kind of don't care that everybody thinks you're wrong. So Einstein famously knew and believed, we would say he believed, but in his mind, he knew he was right about the theory of relativity. And they went to test his experiment with a certain observation of an eclipse and where the stars were, something like this. And they took a photo and it proved him wrong. And he said, no, I'm right. Redo the experiment. And they redid the experiment and he was proven right. And he published this in 1905. And I believe it was something like 1919 until he was proven right. So think about that. For 14 years, there are people who are saying he's an idiot, he's crazy, he's making this up, he's a fool, he just doesn't understand Newtonian physics. And then we've proven him wrong. and then they said, well, you kind of did the experiment wrong, and they redid the experiment 14 years later, or I don't remember the exact year, something like that, and he was proven right, and now today it's just a given that he's right. So
there's still a common thread that we can pull out. Like, you're going to scripture, you're doing your due diligence, you're studying, you're researching, and you have a belief in the truth that you're finding in scripture, and you're standing on that. And I think that principle can still be applied across the board.
Oh, for sure.
Who's different like me, who's
well, I would say, and of course this is maybe a bit biased, but I would say everyone should have a little bit of Asperger's and not be concerned with what other people think, right? The woke people have this expression mansplaining, right? So that's where and what they really mean is that when you explain something to someone in a way that's what's the word I'm looking for? Is it demeaning or condescending? That's the word. When you explain something to people in a way that's condescending, and I have people all the time, men and women, who explain to me in a condescending way, oh, don't you know there's no V in Hebrew? I read that in Wikipedia. How can Nehemia not know this? Okay, well, I happen to know probably more than you do about Hebrew. That's my expertise. Fine. But I think everybody should have a little bit of autism in the sense that who cares what everybody else thinks? You shouldn't care. People are going to condescendingly explain things to you, and they're going to be wrong, right? And boy, we've seen that a lot in the mainstream culture in the last few years, where people, let's just take something, I don't know if we want to get banned here, but I'll take something that isn't controversial, the masks. Don't use masks, they don't work. Oh, we were lying because we wanted the doctors to have masks. If you don't use masks, you're killing old people. Oh, it turns out the masks really don't help and they don't work, right? And that whole progression, all from the mainstream wisdom, right? I'm not talking about conspiracy theorists. The mainstream authorities said every one of those statements, right? I might be paraphrasing, but basically they were saying originally, don't wear masks, they don't work. And they later admitted, well, it was a noble lie because we wanted the first responders to have the masks and there weren't enough. And you better use a mask or the old people will die and killing people. I used to hear that all the time. And then, the masks didn't actually prevent the spread. So you're being explained something in a condescending way that may or may not be true. And you should stick with what in your gut, in your heart, to be the truth based on the best evidence you've seen. Now, if you see better evidence, you should change. You say, well, you've invested years in this and a lot of money and all that's true. But if I found I was wrong, in a minute I would change because I want the truth. That's all I'm after is the truth. And to the best, here's what I say. I don't have a recording of God speaking to Moses from the burning bush and saying, this is my name forever. I don't have that. What I have is transcriptions that were transmitted for many generations by scribes. And are those the exact words that God spoke to Moses? I can say I believe that, but that's a theological belief, right? It's not based on, let's say, empirical evidence and fact that I can prove. Based on the empirical evidence and the facts I can prove, to the best of my knowledge, his name is Yehovah and not Yahweh. Could it be Yahweh? Sure, it could be Yehuvuhu. It could be anything, right? All I could do is stick with the best evidence I have. And I think the one takeaway that's important for everybody is if you have this deep conviction in your heart based on reading scripture that something is true, don't let the experts tell you you're killing old people if you believe that, or you're, like with the masks, or, that scripture doesn't work. Don't bother putting it on your face. And, do put it on your face or you'll harm people, right? Don't listen to the experts. You can hear what the experts have to say. But do they know what they're talking about? They might know what they're talking about, and it's a noble lie because they have some other agenda, right? And I don't think that's necessarily the case in biblical studies, right? But I hear experts all the time saying, well, we know that X, Y, and Z is true. And what they really mean is, my friends and I have come to a consensus among ourselves that all of that evidence you're citing isn't important and it's not valid, but this other evidence that we focus on is important and valid. Well, who cares what you and your friends decided? In 50 years from now, you and your friends won't be around, and some other group of people will have some other consensus. There's this expression that I hear in the media, in more of the alternative media, which is "don't believe your lying eyes." Right? You'll even hear that in the mainstream media. Well, I won't give examples, but people know what I'm talking about. Right? So it's things you can see with your own eyes, and they use this term gaslighting, which I like that term if it's used correctly. What gaslighting really means, it was originally a play and later 2 different movies. And the plot was, there's this woman who is very wealthy, and her husband is trying to get her committed to a mental institution so he can steal all of her wealth. And I don't remember exactly, but he's pulling some kind of prank on her. Like, he has something that he hides, and he makes her, and he accuses her of stealing it. She's like, I didn't steal it. And he goes and he says, well, unlock your little cupboard or whatever. And she unlocks the cupboard, and it's hidden there. And she's like, he says, you don't remember. Right. So what he's doing is he's changing reality on her. Right. And it's called gaslighting because he's sneaking into the other apartment and messing with the lights, and or it causes the lights to flicker. And she sees the lights flickering, and she's like, something's going on. And he tells her, no, you're just imagining that. The lights are not flickering. And the lights were gas powered back then, right? Like, actually, like butane or gas or whatever, right? So so people are doing this around us all the time. They're gaslighting us. They're telling us, you saw something happening, but it didn't really happen. Mm-hmm. Right? You were wearing a mask and you got that disease. No, it wasn't because you didn't wear the mask right. Right. See, the masks work. They work. We said they work. You just didn't wear it right. You weren't really wearing it. You're like, I know I was wearing it. I don't, what? So they're gaslighting us in biblical studies as well. They're gaslighting us in Judaism. They're gaslighting us in Christianity. We can see things with our own eyes. We can feel them in our heart. And they're telling us they're not so. Maybe they are so.
Even in everyday life, our own lies that we can believe based on life experiences, when it can gaslight reality and can hold us captive in that bondage. But if we go back to scripture and we find the truth and stand in that truth and cleave to that truth, we can live in freedom. And kind of just bridging that scholarship to life, take feedback and evidence for growth, but always take it back to scripture and stand in the truth of scripture.